I'm Gareth Owen, and this is DragonHeart.
Welcome to DragonHeart, the last DragonHeart before Christmas. I am joined by Bill and Mark Griffiths, Captain Liechtenstein himself. How are we, guys?
Very good, very good. Christmas is coming. The goose is getting fat. Please remove Aaron Hayden's hat. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
It's magic hat.
It's magic hat, absolutely so. Yeah.
But yeah, you guys all set for Christmas?
Not in the slightest. Not at all.
It's sort of am, and it's quite out of character. But I think I'm kind of am. Yeah, I feel weird actually now. Now you made me think about this. What's wrong with me? I'm organized. Oh, this won't last.
Well, that doesn't strike. That does surprise me, Mark. To be fair, you do seem like a guy that would leave something to last minute, and
just like
Wrexham.
Mark has
just like Wrexham.
Yeah, Mark's got Christmas Eve panic shopping written all over him, hasn't he?
But it's always like a 96th minute winner sort of thing. It's always great.
Always a cracking present, but just bought at the last minute.
96th minute Tracy Island.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about in this show. We've got the 2 Wrexham games over the weekend, and we've got the Newport game to look forward to, and any other Christmassy bits and bobs to talk about. So this is DragonHeart.
I'm Mia Roberts, and this is DragonHeart.
Well, Colchester at home, Saturday. A really, really, really tough test, Bill, against a side that were quite stubborn, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those. I felt like we were kind of coasting a little bit until the red card. I think that we might have eventually broken them down like we do with teams with 10 men. But I think it just goes to show how strong we are that we didn't look like we were a man down until pretty much the last 5 minutes. And then even then, I still felt like we were relatively comfortable. It's just one of those sort of games that I think really, really displays how strong the side is, Mark, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah, we play against 11 men, a man down, and we still look comfortably the better side. And it was good that Phil Parkinson reminded them of that at half-time, because the players have said that's what happened, haven't they? It's totally understandable that after a red card, we reorganise and drop off a little bit. But Parkinson quite rightly said to them at half-time, yeah, but you can still dominate this game with 10 men, and they came out in the second half and we were totally in control. I mean, it's a good job we scored before George Evans's red card, because I think if it was 0-0 at that point, we might have it a bit more difficult. But the truth is, as you said, Bella, before the goal, I thought we looked really comfortable. It reminded me of the Morecambe game. You know, they were neat and tidy on the ball. Fair enough, but we had no sweat in defence against when we had 11, and we were quite happy. We got the early goal, and we were quite happy. Sit off a bit, let them pass it around in front of us. They're not going to cause any problems. And then their defence looked shaky, and we could just nip in and hit them on the break, and we were going to get more goals. And I just felt like the second half they would probably have caved in like Morecambe did. The red card changes it, but once we'd had that half-time reset and got on the front foot, we were by far the better side in the second half. Their consolation goal, if you want to call it that, that's what I shouldn't call it that, because it gave them 7 minutes of added time to chase us. But that just puts an unrealistic picture on the scoreline. I thought we were comfortably on top of that game. Howard didn't have many saves to make. And yeah, I was just really pleased. Well, you can say, Bill, it shows our strength and depth, shows our resilience. And it also shows that if you bring James Jones on at half-time, he's going to do the running of 2 players. So, you know, maybe not at that much of a disadvantage anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to talk about the red card. From our view and the commentary area, I thought that the first challenge could have been a red, And then re-looking at the highlights, the second one was definitely a straight red. Bill, what was your thoughts? I thought they were two silly challenges and he did deserve to go off.
I think I can't really remember the first one too clearly because it's at the side of the pitch where that sort of, so from where I'm sat, it's that far left corner, right in front of you guys, actually, wasn't it? Really, I suppose.
Yeah.
Am I remember that rightly? Is that where it?
It was edge of the box, wasn't it?
Yeah.
At the cop end.
Right, that's it. Yeah. So I couldn't really see that, but it felt like nobody was up in arms about him getting a yellow. You know what I mean? Nobody. You can usually tell when it's wildly out of proportion. And then the second one was, I felt like it was a yellow rather than a straight red at the time, and so did everyone around us. But then I've seen the replays, and I know still images are a bit misleading sometimes, but there is one where he's got the contact and the ball is well and truly, the other side of him, and the ref had such a good view of it that fair enough, that's a red. Nobody, not a single person in the stand, which is unusual, had any complaints that he was sent off. The only complaint was whether it should have been a second yellow or a straight red.
Yeah, and I think that. Sorry,
they were both orange cards. I thought, borderline reds, both of them. So you could tell by the reaction in the crowd that everyone thought, because usually if there's a red card for a Wrexham player, I wouldn't want to be that referee running to the car park after the game. You know what I mean? Yeah. It can be quite nasty. But Mark, they started applauding George Evans, which says a lot about what they think of the player.
It's interesting, that, isn't it? Because I mean, he was silly, really. He did deserve the red card. How you've described it is perfect. To be fair to the ref, he got it spot on. I think the first one is a yellow, but at the time we were both saying, Chay, weren't we? We wondered if it was a red. Looking at it again, I mean, he's lunged in to get the ball on the edge there. He's tempted in because it's a short goal kick, and he's thinking, if I win this, they're in real trouble. But he's never gets into any positions and nip in and win it. So I like his enthusiasm, but he comes around the side of the player. The player's got his back to it's facing his own goal. And he just goes down the side, doesn't get near it, and then his trailing leg totally clears him out. It's a definite yellow. And then the second one, like you said, for me, it's a straight red. I think the rest played it correctly, and he had no real chance of winning the ball, I thought, in the first one. Although I get why he went for it, and the second one, there was no real need. I mean, the ball from Cannon takes a little touch and goes beyond him, but he didn't have to go in like that. So I was a little surprised in a way that people clapped him off because he'd sold us down the river a little bit. But his performances lately have been outstanding. He's a cracking player for us. And so, in that regard, and also because, Wrexham sticks together sort of thing, that's what gets us so far. So it was a nice reflection of the crowd's general wonderful relationship with the players that they were clapping him off. But he was a bit lucky to get slapped off because he left us down a bit of a hole, didn't he? Let's be honest. Can I just say as well, with the referee, I thought he got those decisions spot on, and as Bill said, his positioning was perfect. He's like 2 yards away, just standing there looking at it. Shame that when he was on virtually the same patch of grass on the pitch in the second half, that he couldn't see that McGeehan going right through Cannon's legs. He didn't even give a foul. And I thought, having seen it again, it's a borderline red card. He's out of control. He goes over the ball, and Colchester then break and get a shot off while we're down to 9 men. So, he might be very good at getting into the right position. He's not necessarily 100% on seeing what's happened right under his nose.
I suppose that's referees at this level, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're not gonna be perfect. But I'll tell you what, someone who had a near perfect performance for me was Andy Cannon and Elliot Lee, to be fair. When George Evans come off, Elliot Lee had to drop back, didn't he, and do a lot of the nitty-gritty defensive work, which, is not what he's traditionally known for. But both Andy Cannon and Elliot Lee did a really good job to see us through that first half, didn't they, Bill?
Oh, yeah, superb. And I mean, they're two players that I think, although Andy Cannon has played that deep lying player of 3, we've not seen the best of him in that position. I think he plays a little bit better on the right-hand side with Elliot Lee on the left, just because he's got that little bit more freedom. And Elliot Lee's come to us as, I mean, we've talked about it many times, or Mark's talked about it a lot on commentary as well, how, Elliot Lee's come to us as a central attacking midfielder, almost even a second striker, and has redeveloped his game to be a centre midfielder in the way that he has. So for the two of them in that system to play almost like two anchors together, trying to fit, and you sort of noticed that Mullin was dropping back quite deep to almost play the Elliot Lee role in the free, but a little bit further up. It's a superb performance by both of them to see out the second half, and then superb second half by both of them as well. And you know what, mate? Like, I will be open and honest. There's a few times, especially at the beginning of the season, Chay, that I said to you quite a lot, I'm not really sure what Andy Cannon offers us and whether he has a place in the starting 11. But in the last few games, he's really proven me wrong, and I'm very happy to admit that, because he's starting to, it seems to be starting to click for him, Mark, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. I can see your point. And after he got sent off at Crawley, I was starting to think, quite a lot of quality and depth. Jordan Davis isn't getting much game time. Maybe, Cannon has to be going down the pecking order. But to be fair, since then, he's come back in and his form has been utterly outstanding. I thought he was the best player on the pitch, most definitely on Saturday. He intercepts, he nips in, he makes those little challenges. He's a nice technical player, isn't he? And I quite enjoyed his protest when we would sit in too deep and trying to pass our way out from defence and Colchester swarming round us. And we broke up an attack, and it fell to him, like sort of halfway up our half. And nobody had stepped up to support him because we were all sitting off. And so we just kicked her into the crowd as if to say, lads, if we're not going to bother getting up the pitch and playing our way out of trouble, I'm not going to bother even trying. So I thought, wow, I think that was quite a powerful message to say to the players what Parkinson was going to say at half time. Lads, let's get up. Let's get at them. Let's not just sit in when we win the ball and let them bring it back to us. We've got to try and hurt them. I think kudos as well to Dalby, for the simple reason, I just feel sorry for him, because we did have quite a debate at the end of the first half and into half time, didn't we, Chay, about, we need to change, but what? And I think it was, with hindsight, I think it was obviously the right thing to do. But the reason I didn't commit to it was because I just felt sorry for him, because I thought he worked very hard as a lone striker. We had to get Mullin out of that midfield three, didn't we, really? Because even though he works his socks off, but he's not a midfielder. So I felt so sorry for Dalby. At least I bet he's assured to start on Saturday after having to be sacrificed. But when Jones came in again, it just gives you that solidity of that familiar midfield three, and Mullin makes the runs so people can hit him. I quite enjoyed with Jones watching him. He was quite conservative compared to normal with his running, because we're a man down. But he was really alert at trying to watch out that side of the pitch gets really locked down, and that if Mendy wants to get up and down a bit, he'll be covering. He always does, but more than usual. In fact, there was one passage of play where the other two midfielders were getting a bit more engaged in midfield in the second half, and he deliberately was like just sitting a bit deeper than those two, just watching, and he kept checking over his shoulder all the time just to see where Mendy was, just to see where their wing back was. Just a fullback route, just checking over his shoulder. It reminded me of when Homer Simpson fought Drederick Tatum. I think it's his first fight. He fights some Bindle stiff, and the guy, they're all hobos, aren't they? Hobo Jim, and they're all got things like that. And this first opponent, he's good, but he keeps getting distracted because he's looking over his shoulder at his Bindle in the corner, all his possessions wrapped up and tied at the end of a stick. And so he'll give a couple of jabs. Look at me, I'm a southpaw. He'll give a couple of jabs, and then he'll look over his shoulder again. And it was a bit like that. James Jones would be like watching the game and then just having a quick look. Where's that bloke? Watch the game again. Where's that? I just like that. Yeah, I think James Jones has a lot of qualities which are sort of easy to miss, and things like that, tactical discipline and just slotting in perfectly to get that midfield balanced so the Colchester can't get at us is one of them. So I quite enjoyed that little sort of masterclass in the silent arts of football. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I do think James Jones was, because at half time I was just shouting. I remember just not shouting, but I remember saying, "This is a game for James Jones now.
Yeah,
He needs to come on. You know, if you're 10 men and you've got someone like James Jones on the bench, he has to come on because he covers so much ground.
yeah.
His work rate's fantastic. You know, his cardio and his fitness is probably the best in the whole squad, isn't it? In all fairness." So yeah, I was glad he come on and he did see us through the game. But Bill, it was not a classy 3 points, was it? It wasn't one that we'll remember forever, but it's very important sometimes to win like that and not win flashy and your 2-3 nils. I think your nitty gritty wins against a side like Colchester we'll be looking back on really fondly at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the kind of thing that if we lose, that could be a turning point in the season. That's all right. It's easy to rationalize going down to 10 men, but you can't underestimate how things like that can damage morale sometimes. I think like Parkinson's good enough to keep the players in check, but people's team seasons have unraveled over less in the past, and if we'd have lost that game, would have been devastating. And I think it just goes to show us what I've loved about Parkinson's side since last year and even the season before is the importance of not losing, but also of it, like Mark sort of said that he said at halftime, just imposing that dominance and having the confidence to go out there and get 3 points in situations where other Wrexham teams would have even good Wrexham teams would have crumbled in those circumstances.
I mean, that's exactly right, isn't it? Because it amazes me. You still see people talking about Parkinson being a defensive coach just because they've heard some Sunderland fans saying that. Where is he a defensive coach? I mean, he is liable, you're quite right, to switch to that 4 at the back when we're drawing. And I mean, when he switches to 4 at the back, that really is the kitchen sink approach, isn't it? That really is right. We're going gung ho. We're going to take risks here. But he will do that when we're drawing rather than when we're losing, because he is determined to get 3 points out in games. I think he should be applauded for that because that's brave. But yeah, he was right. He configured it right at the halftime, I think, didn't he? And I really enjoyed us. Although I've got to say, if we'd had 11 men, I'm convinced we'd have scored a lot of goals. Not least because of the nature of our second goal, which just illustrated that you can put a bad cross into a penalty area where there are no strikers, and that Colchester defense will still manufacture a goal for us somehow. Because I mean, let's be honest, James McLean. I mean, fair play to him. He whipped it in with a bit of swaz, but nonetheless, there's nobody in the box, and the defender panics. And so often, I feel so sympathetic to defenders when the ball gets flashed in behind them. They feel they got to stick a foot out. But I mean, that was just sheer panic, that wasn't it? I mean, there's no one there.
I've got to say personally that they were, without wanting to sound too harsh, they were easily the worst side I've seen Wrexham play this season. I know, 2-1 and we were at home and all that sort of stuff, and we beat Morecambe 6-0. But Morecambe, I think it was just a tactical thing, wasn't it? We just sort of got them on the day. I would be. I mean, look, it's very early days, and they've got time to.
I don't know. Tranmere were pretty bad.
Tranmere were bad, right? Tranmere were bad, but I just felt like they had moments in that game, not massive moments, but I don't know. Just I wasn't at the Tranmere game, was I? I watched it on a TV.
Yeah,
I don't know if you heard about this on the commentary, but it was one of the funniest things I've seen at the racecourse. A pair of Father Christmases in the Colchester end got kicked out for trying to start a fight with the Wrexham fans. Now, obviously, we don't condone violence and all that sort of stuff, and violence isn't funny. That wasn't funny, but seeing 2 blokes dressed as Father Christmas get dragged out the crowd was absolutely hysterical. And then as we were walking back from the ground, they were by the train station being looked after by police, clearly not sober, and some kids that must have only been about 9 or 10, maybe a little bit older, were giving it back to them, and it was just hilarious. I'll leave the language out, but that was a highlight for me. It was very funny.
Well, I mean, while I agree that violence is not funny, if you've ever seen the Malcolm in the Middle episode where the whole family fights with clowns, I mean, that is funny. So that sounds like a similar scenario, that to me. Bless them. Bad. Oh, God. If they don't get released from custody in time, what's going to happen at Christmas? Colchester cancel Christmas. There's a headline.
Well, from one win to another win. After this, we're going to talk about that extra win, the 2 wins on the bounce against Wrexham versus Britain Ferry.
I'm Steve Dale, and this is DragonHeart.
Welcome back. Hey, hang on. That's not Chay. Who's this guy talking now? I'm afraid it's me, Mark. And the reason why is that Chay has mysteriously disappeared. Now, those of you watching in video can see the ghostly presence of his chair right there. It may well bring you back to that scene, of course, in Act 2 of Macbeth, where Banquo's seat is empty at the banquet. But Macbeth thinks somebody's there because he sees the ghost of Banquo, who has just recently had killed by some dodgy lads in the marsh. So, yeah, there's old Banquo hovering suspiciously, weird little sort of shimmering at the bottom, which makes me even more scared when I'm talking about ghosts and Chay's chair. But yeah.
I love how you described Macbeth's hitmen as dodgy lads, because that's the perfect description for them.
Exactly so. The sort of fellas that you might meet in certain parts of Wrexham at certain times of night. The actually, I mean, let's be honest, it's not true. The real and rather mundane reason why he's gone is because we're about to talk about the women's team, and of course, he's a notorious misogynist. So, I'm only joking. He is a reasonable man who won't know I said this until he watches this back, if he ever does, which means I'm fairly safe as long as his brother keeps his mouth shut. Yeah, I've just illustrated. I know where the dodgy blokes are. So,
okay, yeah.
Be careful.
Mark Beth over here.
Mark Beth! I like that. I'm keeping that. The women's game was actually quite odd. Have you heard about the apparent reason why Britain Ferry turned up with a massively rotated team?
I have not heard the reason. Please enlighten us, Mark Beth.
Well, I mean, it was so widespread at the ground and being repeated by people who are in the know that I totally assume this is completely true. They had organised their Christmas do for the night before because it was a rearranged game. And to be fair, we're not talking about professional footballers. And so they didn't rearrange it. And as a result, I mean, having played them the Saturday before and they gave us a tough game, well, in this game, there were only 3 players from that starting 11 who were actually in the match day squad. There was only 1 substitute. So when you see that, you think, aye, this is going to be fun. And I've got to be honest, first 10 minutes, I thought, yeah, this is going to be a massive, massive mismatch. We had them penned in the penalty area. We were looking really dangerous. And you just thought, this is going to be one of those 15-0 games, you know? To be fair, though, they did defend their box really well, even though they couldn't get out of it. They genuinely couldn't get out of it. But they did defend their box well to the extent that in the first half, we didn't work their keeper at all. We didn't have any on-target shots, that I can recall. And as the half wore on, and you know, you talk about earning your right to be in a game, they got a lot more confidence and they started creeping up the pitch and getting their passes together. And they had they didn't have a couple of dangerous moments, I wouldn't say that, but they had a couple of moments where they were releasing players into dangerous parts of the pitch. Nothing came of it. And you started thinking, hold on a second. The last 10 minutes of the first half were quite poor from us, because I think we were suddenly thinking, hold on, this should be a thrashing. And we're not putting them to bed at all. Then Rosie Hughes had to come off injured then as well, which hopefully is nothing too serious. And then you're thinking, oh my gosh, oh, this is awkward. Half time, 0-0.
Mm.
You're going to get a real crazy upset. Now, to be fair, same as Parkinson the day before. I think Steve Dale just reset us. And the second half, we slaughtered them. I mean, we were impressed. We got 4 goals. I admit 2 at an injury time, or 90th minute and another 92nd. But by that point, our superior fitness had really told, and we were just ripping. It was like sort of a world champion boxer having a really inexperienced, exhausted boxer on the ropes. So we were just pounding away at them, either scoring or the keeper's making a save, or we're just missing. So it ended up as it should have done. But kudos to Britain Ferry for turning up, division lower with a second string team and actually giving us a game like that. And it was a fascinating illustration of how football games can develop. That old cliche, like I said, of earning your right to be in the game. They should have been battered, but they held on. And by holding on, and holding on through good defending, they did start to crawl their way into it until we finally got rid of them. It was a fascinating afternoon, if a bit edgy in the first half.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair to Britain Ferry, that you say a division below, but they're only a division below by way of a lottery style playoff that they could have quite easily have won. To be fair to them, they're clearly a good side. Do you know what they're doing in the league this year?
The top of the league, they've won every game and they've yet to concede. So not bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, fair play. That's impressive, isn't it?
But it was interesting seeing them back to back in these 2 games, because they felt a full strength team, obviously, for the Welsh Cup quarter final. And you could see how we've stepped on. And certainly in terms of fitness, because, one of the big changes as we've brought in a fitness coach, Zoe's a health and fitness and conditioning coach. And there's a huge difference, I think. You couldn't see it at the start of the season because I think that sort of thing's gradual, isn't it? You can't just have a couple of seconds with a fitness coach and then, wow, look at me, I'm Superman. But it's all kicking in now. So you look at the Cardiff and Swansea games, our first 2 home games, and you could see that they were fitting us at the end because they've had the benefit of this for a while. But in this game now, when you think of last season when we played Britain Ferry and we were having to hang on quite a lot, they were a good side. But in this match and in both games, to be honest, in the second half, our superior fitness really came through, and we were running them ragged, even when it was their full strength side. It was a different game, the first game against full strength side from the playoff, because we dominated, we were on top, we got at them, and we should have won by more than 2 goals. Although they showed in the second half a bit of what they got until they got a bit tired. But it's interesting. I mean, it's brilliant having Lily Jones commentating with me on Sunday, although I'd rather she didn't, because, I'd rather she was on the bench. But, she was saying as well, she thought it might have been a bit of nervousness and edginess in that playoff as well. She felt it wasn't so much that they were a good possession team and imposed themselves on us as that we played badly, which was interesting to hear, because, we are good on the break. We are good at we've got a very good defensive unit. We are good at absorbing pressure and hitting teams. But she was saying, no, we just didn't play well. But it's in these 2 games here, we did impose ourselves, albeit with the fact that Britain Ferry's Christmas do kind of helped us out a bit in the second match. Bizarrely.
I can't help but feel sorry for Britain Ferry, though, to be fair, and Connors Key, because last season when I watched them play both those sides, they're as good as TNS or as good as anyone else we've played in at this level. To be honest, they'd be competitive against Cardiff and Swansea. It's just a bit of a shame that the Welsh system for the women is quite poorly. Got to be careful what I say.
It's growing, isn't it? It's growing.
It's growing, but I can't help but feel like, why couldn't us and Britain Ferry get promoted and then Connors Key goes into a playoff with the other side who were second?
Totally.
Why couldn't they do that?
For me,
Mark,
sorry, Bill, go on.
No, I was going to say, Mark, you'll probably be able to explain it better. But are there enough teams yet that are of the quality required to fill? What is it? Eight in the top league and then 8 in both the other leagues. That's, my maths is rubbish. 24, isn't it? 24 half decent teams. Is is there scope? You don't really see the likes of Bangor, Rill, Port Talbot. They're all big. Well, I've Port Talbot got a team up in the higher level. I don't really know with the southern teams,
but then it's up to the Welsh FA to invest into the ecosystem.
Of course,
then have teams like Rickfield, who do have a women's team, invest more money into them so they can get to a level to play at the second division and then eventually challenge to make the whole ecosystem bigger. The fact that Wrexham had to play in a playoff last season and Britain Ferry was disgusting in my eyes.
I completely agree. I just feel there's something wrong about this, because what you said, Chay, hits the nail on the head. This is women's football in Wales is a developing sport, and therefore it needs to be invested in. I think, Bill, you ask a very good question. Are there 24 strong teams? I'd say no. I'd say the bottom end of that second division contains a lot of teams that, you have those mismatches I talked about earlier with. But the fact is, how do you change it? Surely you change it by making things more competitive, and as Chay said, by looking to maybe invest more broadly to try and bring the general standard up. I think it's daft. I mean, for me, you said a while ago, Dan, Chay, about they're as good as TNS. Well, I think there's some really other very interesting examples to compare to. You look at the table and you'll see that Pontypridd United have got in the top division, they have 0 points. Barrytown United are really not that far ahead of them either. Now, I'm not trying to single those teams out to be cruel, just to say that having one up, one down, as we know from the National League, leads to atrophy. It leads to teams rotting away, and they still sit there in the top division, while other sides are strong in the division below, and they just can't get up. And I think that's exactly what's happening, and I can't see how that's healthy for the Welsh system. And clearly, Britain Ferry and Conisky Nomads, the two teams that, as you say, pushed us really hard, are clearly way too good for their level, because they've both got 100% records. Then two teams below them in both divisions are Llandudno and Britain Fair, and Cascade, which is hang on a second, I was going to say a team from Swansea, maybe wrong. I'll step back from that, right? Both those teams, the second place teams, the only points they've dropped have been when they played the top teams.
Yeah.
So for me, you've got two teams, well, 4 teams who look pretty much ready to roll, and there's only one promotion spot. And Conisky and Britain Ferry may well win every game this season in the league and then play each other for the right to go up, which is wrong in my eyes. I think there should be 12 teams in the top division. And then if we can, I understand that the Welsh FA, you look at the men's game, have looked to develop it by having strict financial rules and ground grading rules and things like that. And I do actually accept that they've done a lot of that well. But I think women's football is in a different position. And I think that a team like, say, I think Connor's key. Well, no, let me say this Cascade team in the south. If they can't get up, there'll come a point where their golden little period ends, and they'll drift off, and it'll be, like Histon. Remember them? They drift off, they nearly get in the Football League, and then it's finished. That they're the flowers that need nurturing. They're the clubs that you need to just make sure they keep going. I think it's a mistake, and I think this is such an opportunity to take advantage of Wrexham's high profile and actually say, girls, come on, play football. Look at this. You could be playing against Rosie Hughes. You could be playing against Lily Jones. That sort of thing. They're known players. Use it. They really need to.
And Cardiff and Swansea, they played in them stadiums recently as well. These are huge sides. It's not just Wrexham, it's Cardiff, Swansea, it's huge. And as you said, Mark, what I am worried about is if, say, it's a Conisky Britain Ferry final again, for example, I don't know, one of those sides win, how much more can you keep on pumping into something?
Yeah.
How much more can you financially keep on pumping into things if you cannot get promoted as easily? Exactly. It's a travesty that these two sides can't get promoted, and it's Llandudno versus the second side in South Wales to play each other to try and get. Then that makes the next season more what's the word? More competitive.
Yeah.
It makes the top league more competitive. I
Mm.
just think it's a little bit of a joke, and I think the Welsh women's system's not taken seriously, which is a shame.
Yeah, that is, I agree. It is a concern of mine. I just feel, okay, I know there's lots of practicalities. It'd be easy for me to sit on the opposition benches and say the government should be doing this, but it just feels there's lots of opportunities at the moment, and if you just keep it as it always is, you won't seize them. I mean, just to illustrate, I suppose, the point I'm trying to make. Last season, I think it's fair to say Wrexham, Conisky, and Britain Ferry were outstanding and should have been in the top division. If they all get up as quickly as possible, that process will take 3 years. That's wrong.
Yeah.
Those 3 clubs should be in the top division. And I should point out as well, actually, Cascade took Britain Ferry. Britain Ferry, I think I'm right in saying, won all but one game in their league last season, but Cascade took them to the last weekend. So again, I don't pay as much attention to them because they're not up north. But it may well be there's 4 teams that absolutely ought to be in the top division. But that would take 4 years. I mean, that's wrong.
We played Llandudno in the cup this year, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
And that was a very competitive game as well, wasn't it?
We won it in the 94th minute.
Yeah, exactly. So
although I have to admit, they then went off to the League Cup and lost 14.
That goes to show that Llandudno could be good if we play top level as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They certainly played very well against us. Although, like I said, in the next week in the trophy, I haven't checked whether they rotated their team, but they got absolutely slaughtered double figures by one of the top division teams. But Swansea University over the last couple of years have really developed a reputation for giant killing. They've been knocking top division teams out. Britain Ferry reached the cup final last year.
Yeah,
these are it just feels something has to be addressed here, and I just feel like it's a chance to gamble. And if it comes off, it'll pay off. And you got people like Rob and Ryan who probably back it up in terms of publicising things. Welsh FA, I think, need to grab this chance and go for it.
Definitely. I'm just having a quick look at the comparing the men's teams in the Cymru Premier and the North and the South to the Adran Premier and Adran leagues. Just off the top of like a really quick look, you've got big areas like Prestatyn, Colwyn Bay, Carnarvon, Bala, Newtown, Haverfordwest, Port Talbot. I mean, even teams like Gresford have got a men's team. Flint. There's just so many big settlements in Wales that have got big enough scope for expansion teams, as you could probably call it. The Cymru Premier's got 12 teams, and the North and South, respectively, both have 16 teams. Look, it's a hell of a lot easier said than done, but what's to stop the Welsh FA giving out grants to sort out these to sort out these teams, to say, here you go, here's a significant amount of money for you to start a decent women's side. We're going to make a two-tier national level, possibly, like an Adran Premier and an Adran Championship or whatever, and then go regional and split it there. I don't know. Maybe the money isn't there. It's a difficult thing to say when you're not on the other side of it. But like you say, Mark, you've got these 2 massive Hollywood stars who, I'm sure, if they use their connections properly, they want to be involved. They want to be involved in expanding Welsh culture as well as the football. There's absolutely nothing stopping the Welsh FA approaching them in some way or another, even if it was just for, I don't know, Aviation Gin to sponsor the league and use that money to, well, maybe that's a conflict of interest. I don't know. That is a tough one, but do you see what I'm getting at? There's something to be said there, isn't there, about using some money for an expansion for these clubs that have already got the facilities because the men are using them.
Yeah. 100%. And even if it's not a sponsorship thing, it's just the fact that, as you said, they are committed to community work. And if they were the people who were able to, resurrect, or not resurrect, were able to propel the women's game in Wales forwards, that would be, I'm sure, something they'd be interested in being involved in. But
and let's be honest as well, without wanting to sound arrogant, because this is a Wrexham podcast. They've got the absolute they've got the gold mine that is missing, the big three in Welsh football. Bearing in mind, why aren't Newport being approached and asked to get in the mix here as well from the women's point of view? But I suppose that's those kind of things are quite political sometimes. But you got the big three Welsh clubs that are playing each other. They never play each other anymore, ever. They're going to be in regular competition every single year. Let's make a big deal out of the fact that Cardiff and Swansea and Wrexham are going to be title challenging against each other, because it's so unique in the history of Welsh football that those three teams are going for the league at the same time as each other.
I think it's great that there's teams like Aberystwyth who get to play.
Yeah,
Swansea,
absolutely.
Cardiff,
Absolutely.
It's great for local Welsh football fans, and the way the women's games are played on a Sunday as well, so you can get to watch them at any men's team that you follow. You can get to watch 2 extra games on a Saturday and Sunday. One thing I love about the women's games is how affordable it is. It's a completely different demographic, and I don't know. I just think a lot of the things are so brilliant about watching the Welsh women's sides that I've actually extremely enjoyed, and I've enjoyed commentary. I've enjoyed going and watching them. It's a completely different experience, but an enjoyable one. It's just a shame that I think the FAW haven't invested in it properly yet. But maybe if we talk about it, the more we talk about it, maybe that's how that ignites change. So every we are us as a podcast, we are in fully support of the whole Welsh ecosystem for women's football, and we will carry on talking about it until something is changed and something is done about it.
One last positive, I've said it before, but I will say it again. All of our formative years of watching football were watching Wrexham men's play. My experiences were standing on the Kop. Chay's lads and hopefully my lad, when he arrives, will all spend their formative years going to watch the women's team, because it's more accessible, it's cheaper, it's easier to get tickets, and it has that. I loved it when we took your lads, Chay, last time. Yeah. It just reminded me of being on the Kop, because you could just get up and go for a walk and just let the kids just have a bit of a leg stretch to stop the boredom kicking in. Back in the day, you'd be getting a can of pop that you've just finished and kicking that around, wouldn't you, on the Kop, even if the football was going on. So it's nice that experience still exists within football.
And also the fact that you're so much closer to the players, in the sense that they'll go to the fans afterwards and chat and have pictures taken. And it was quite funny talking to Lily last Sunday, because I had to ask her about that post racecourse game. I took a while to pack up, but they still did the same thing, even though there were near 10,000 people in. They were walking, all the players, slowly around the pitch, getting selfies taken, chatting with fans, things like that. And even after I'd finished, I remember it took quite a while to pack up. And even after that, they're still out there. And she said they were out there for about 2 hours on the pitch, just working their way around all the crowd that come down from the stands. And it's just things like that. It's a chance to get close to the team that you don't really get with the men's team in quite the same way. Although the men's team and the fans have got this astonishing bond, but the women's team, you can wander down to the side of the pitch afterwards and say well played to them and have a little chat. Like Karen Allen, the captain, for example. I think I mentioned this in the podcast. What the heck? I'll repeat myself. I'm doing that after Christmas dinner for about a week anyway, so what the hell? Karen Allen is a rock solid centre. He's class centre back. What a player. But very comfortable with the ball at her feet. And will sometimes drive forwards through the middle. But I'd never seen her doing this before. She just started suddenly, and remember, this is a back four, not a back three. She just suddenly started making charges down the wing, like an overlapping centre-back. And she was tremendous in the second half. And we were overloading. It was causing all sorts of problems. And she was loving it, just tearing down the wing and coming back again. And I said to her afterwards, I said, oh, I like this overlapping centre-back thing. That you're a winger now, are you? And she said, oh, yeah, in anticipation of all the pigs on blankets she'd be having next week, she said she thought she'd put a few laps in early. But it's just like, that accessibility of just walking along and the players are there on the side of the pitch. You can say hi. It's nice in that respect as well. Nice for kids to see that and see that players who they respect and who they might emulate to be like are approachable. I think that's a good thing too. I really, yeah, I love my Sundays.
Well, my lad loves watching the Wrexham ladies side. It's what he says. He likes to watch. He actually prefers to watch the women play over the men. Bless him. So he, it's great to inspire the future kids, and especially the young girls coming up, because God, because of Rosie Hughes, because of Amber Lightfoot, and all these fantastic players that we've got. Who knows what we could produce in the future? Maybe we could produce a really, really top level player, which, who knows? We could maybe get Wales into a World Cup or a Euros in the women's game as well. So that's something that would be fantastic in the future.
And I must say as well, I mean, and here's a cry out to everybody who respected Bill's violence is not right, but it is great sentiments earlier. If you want to see proper crunching tackles that leave your opponent in a twisted heap, please come to watch Wrexham, because we have our defense is epic. And I mean, for example, the two fullbacks always bang on about Phoebe Davis and Erin Lovett. Erin's been injured for a while, sadly, but geesh, when they tackle you, you know that you've been tackled. When they tackle you, you can taste your lungs in your mouth. They just crunch in. Absolutely epic. And the centre backs, Alan and Louisa Dixon, are the same. Doran, I keep on Dixon for a reason. Don't know why. Katie Sharp oh man, there's some proper tacklers in that team. So if you enjoy watching players getting crunched, we're the team to come and watch.
Well, that's a great note to finish that segment off. After this, we're going to be talking about a bit of Wales on Wales crime that's going to happen on Saturday. We're going to talk about Wrexham v Newport.
I'm Luke Young, and this is DragonHeart.
Well, Wrexham versus Newport on Saturday. Not quite a derby, but kind of a derby. A good rivalry between two Welsh sides. But we've got a lot of unfinished business with them, haven't we, Bill, after that playoff final and the last time we played him in the FA Cup?
Yeah, I think you can kind of write off the FA Cup game, because it felt a little bit like, with everything that was going on with Sam Ricketts at the time, it felt like we were going to lose. So, and we didn't. We drew, but ended up losing the replay. So that was just one of those things. Now we're back in the same league as them. They're due a pasting. I think it's the type of derby rivalry, whatever you want to call it, that would kind of soften if we were in the same league as them for a good set of years, because it's not really a rivalry. But I think because of that playoff, it's going to be very heated on Saturday, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. I consider it a derby because I feel like Cardiff, Swansea, Newport traditionally are major rivals of ours, but I've never really thought of it as that hot a derby. You don't tend to get a huge amount of fans coming from them until now, because that playoff was just massive. Winner takes all. Their season's wonderful. They're back in the Football League, and it is a fantastic story, to be fair to Newport, who went out of business, refounded themselves. They've had difficulty finding a regular home, but they fought their way back up the divisions, and that's a brilliant story. But I just wish it hadn't happened at our expense.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. So I mean, and the fact, I mean, that was one of the most unpleasant experiences I've ever had at a football ground. It was just a horrible, tense game. It had penalties written all over it, and then we caved right at the end. We missed that famous Brett Ormerod open goal, which I guess sadly is one of the iconic moments of us in this century. And the opportunities missed. I mean, the only thing I can say, the silver lining is, if we'd gone up then, I guess Rob and Ryan wouldn't have been interested in investing. So maybe it worked out for the best. But yeah, it's got much more on it because of that, hasn't it? The cup tie, I think, it just added a little bit of spice. That was it. If you remember that first match, the 0-0 at the racecourse, was the actual day that Ricketts was told you can't come into the ground, wasn't it? Because the club found that he'd been talking to Shrewsbury. But my recollection of that game was that even though I think they were 2 divisions higher than us then, I'm pretty sure. But
weren't they doing really well in League Two that season?
Oh, all right, okay. But they were a strong team, and we dominated them. We were terrific. But they had Joe Day in goal, didn't they? And he just was brilliant, and he repelled us. So we were unlucky not to beat them. And then the second game was 4-0. We had Luke Young sent off quite early. And I haven't actually seen that game. I never got the footage. But by all accounts of people who know what they're talking about who were there, we played a lot better than that 4-0 should have been. But, early sending off in that occasion against a high division team that was doing really well did for us. So, there's going to be spiciness about this game, I think, because of that. We, like you said, Bill, we want to get revenge. We want to get at them.
It was the first time I ever watched Wrexham lift up a trophy, was against Newport in FA Premier Cup in the 02-03 season, which was a fantastic game. That's the only good memory I've got from Newport. But that playoff game, I got to reiterate to the international fans who weren't around at that time, or the younger fans, that was a soul destroying game. And I've always said there's a little bit left. I left a little bit of my football fandom, that little innocence of a football fan child was left at Wembley that day. It was horrendous, I've got to say. There's nothing more I'd love than to really, really beat them from a high score line.
It was the only time I've ever walked out of a ground early, or not I left from my seat, and as I was walking up, just a pure devastation, nearly in tears. It's the worst I've ever reacted to a football game. The second goal went in as I was walking up the stairs. So that was like insult to injury. Not only had I finally made the decision to capitulate and get out of there, they also scored as I was getting away. Awful.
It was just soul destroying, wasn't it? You just couldn't see a goal coming. That's all. It was just, It was depressing. I like the happy side of it, though, Chay. I enjoyed that game when we won 6-1 because they were on their way back up then, weren't they? And fair play to them, but they were no match for the Wrexham promotion side. And I also remember when they were on the way down, I remember watching them in the league, because what happened, we were in, well, it's now League One. They had major problems and they clearly were not competitive, and they lost the league they finished bottom by quite a distance, and then they went straight out of the Football League completely. They had major problems off the pitch. But I remember us walloping them 4-0 in that season. They're my sort of cult hero as a kid, Ollie Cairns, who replaced Jim Steele, my actual hero. Who was I liked Ollie Cairns, and he did a decent job for us, but he was like a big target man, like my hero Jim Steele, but without all the wonderful, again, Bill, violence that goes along with it, which you could get away with in those days. But he is very good at spanking poor teams, and he scored a hat-trick against them in what I seem to recall as being a real sort of man versus Pinata match.
Man versus Pinata.
Well, I think this Newport side aren't a bad side. From what I've heard, they've got a good result and a good performance in them. But if Wrexham play to our best, I'm sure we'll get the result that all Wrexham fans desire. So all I've got to say is thank you very much, and I wish everyone a Merry Christmas. It's the last DragonHeart before Christmas. Thank you to everyone who works in hospitals, retail, to the pubs. If you're listening to this on the way to work, on the way home, thank you so much for keeping the country running and making Christmas time so special. This has been Mark Griffiths, Bill Long, and Chay Long. This is DragonHeart.
A conquo ho.
I'm Neil Roberts, and this is DragonHeart.